Welcome to the Off-Street podcast featuring Adam Reiner and Sean Dan. Off-Street contains general information that is not suitable for everyone and contains certain forward-looking statements of future possibilities that, due to known and unknown risks and other uncertainties and factors, may differ materially from actual results. As such, there is no guarantee that any views and opinions expressed herein will come to pass. Off-Street is presented for informational purposes, and nothing contained herein should be construed as a solicitation to buy or sell any security or as an offer to provide investment, tax, or legal advice. Additionally, this communication contains information derived from third-party sources. Although we believe these sources to be reliable, we make no representations as to their accuracy or completeness. Adam and Sean are employees of Marshall Financial Group, Inc., a registered investment advisor. For additional information about the firm, including its services and fees, send for the firm's disclosure brochure or visit advisorinfo.sec.gov.
All right, Sean, it is Wednesday, September 20th, 3:30 in the afternoon. We have a guest.
Yes, very special episode. I'd like to welcome our very own Matt McGraw to the podcast. Matt.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Want to tell the people a little bit about yourself, about your background?
Yeah. So Matt McGraw, I'm a wealth advisor here at Marshall Financial. I've been here for about 18 months. I focus more on planning, whereas Adam and Sean focus more on investments. So I work with our clients to help develop strategies to reach different financial goals, help them navigate different employer or career situations, help a lot with taxes, and offer a well-rounded suite of consultative services.
So yeah, Matt is also very well versed in how to save, best ways to save, best practices. And so we invited Matt on today to do a Savings 101 podcast.
Yeah, savings have been in the news a lot recently. During COVID, there was a large spike in savings. Since then, it's kind of drifted below the post-2008 to COVID trend. So savings have dipped back down. There seems to be a renewed interest in savings. So we'll just try to break it down a little bit today.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm excited to be here.
So first off, I get a lot of my financial advice from Financial TikTok.
Oh, no, Sean.
What are your thoughts if someone comes in, especially someone who's younger, maybe they don't have a ton of experience investing, but you see on social media, it's become so popular recently, that financial gurus. What would you say to someone who's a new investor who sees that, kind of how to navigate that? What may be pitfalls to stay away from?
I think there's a lot of good stuff out there on social media, but there's certainly a lot of bad stuff as well. When I see certain posts that say, hey, if you save $200 a month starting when you're 25, and assume an average rate of return of 7%, you'll have $1 million or $2 million by the time you're 60 or 65 at retirement age. And all that math checks out, but I think the biggest challenge for people to actually get there is establishing the habits and the discipline to actually put that money away and put it away in an appropriate vehicle.
So, like, savings rate is probably more important than finding the magic investment from someone on social media.
Well, tying it back to last week's episode, probably not doing investing in 0-day options with your savings.
No. That would be something to stay away of, or a lot higher risk type of security.
How would you explain to someone starting out the difference between investing and savings?
The difference between the two would be saving is money that you earn that you just aren't spending on regular day necessities or discretionary spending like entertainment, and it would be what's left over after you get the paycheck. Investing is more of a long game is how I look at it and we look at it. It's something that you could kind of categorize it as a spending bucket, but it's bucketing for future spending.
Maybe not something that you'll need in the short term for emergencies, something that you can tie up for a little bit longer and take risk on.
Right.
And when you go to kind of make that budget, you lay out, okay, these are my needs, these are my wants. I have X amount of dollars left over. How do you go about saying, I want to put this much money towards saving and I want to put this much money towards investing?
So one of the good articles that we saw in the Wall Street Journal outlines what's called the 50-30-20 rule. The way to look at this is that you bucket 50% of your income into necessities. That would be your home, rent, or a mortgage, food, but food at home, like insurances, other things that are required to get by on a daily basis. The next bucket would be bucketing 30% of your income to what would be called wants. This is going to sporting events or going out to eat, things like hobbies, things to do at home, maybe even subscriptions and whatnot can fall into that category. And then bucketing 20% of your total income towards savings. And when you look at your paycheck, you're not looking at your gross pay. You're actually going to look at what you get after taxes. So taxes are kind of already bucketed.
And in that article for the savings, I think they included investing in there. It was retirement savings.
Yes.
Not just even things outside of an emergency fund.
Right. So that 20% bucket, maybe 10% of that's going to a 401k or a like account, whereas another 10% is going into like a short-term cash needs. Maybe you're planning to buy a car. Maybe it's just going into a little bit of an emergency fund. And then once that gets a little bit bigger, you can make a decision to invest that for a longer-term goal.
Can you kind of customize that for yourself? Is that just a good starting point? Because you think maybe a young parent who's got childcare expenses versus a retiree whose kids are out of the house, they have plenty of income, that 50% towards needs, I would think flexes for different people depending on your lifestyle.
It's definitely going to be tailored to your unique circumstance. I think that's a really good starting point. The article even mentions another strategy where it's like a 70-20-10. In that example, 70% is just your overall spending. So that's both necessities as well as wants or discretionary spending. And then 20% is going towards your savings. And then the last 10% is kind of do what you please with it. Maybe it goes towards wants 1 month. Maybe it goes towards savings, or it even mentioned that could be like charitable donations or something to that effect.
My biggest takeaway from this article was no matter which budgeting plan you use, the most important thing is to have a plan, and one that you think you can stick to.
Most definitely.
Yeah, like it's kind of that golden rule of finance. Just make sure you save more than you spend, which I know we're talking about it at a very basic level here, but there are often instances where you can have a very high earner who's just very poor at saving and not really accumulate wealth, and someone who may earn less that's very good at savings and can accumulate wealth. So we're making it sound very elementary, but it's a very important concept within personal finance.
Yeah, and like what I've seen is it's hard to break a habit. So you're either getting into a habit of being a very good saver and being disciplined to whatever percentages you break down for yourself, or you're kind of nonchalant and just you're not really paying too much close attention to it, or you got in these certain habits when you were younger and they just haven't been broken, and every time you try, you just can't stick to it. So like creating good habits or breaking bad habits and being disciplined is a really important aspect of being successful in creating a savings plan.
Which is a good segue there. So whether you're someone that's in peak earning years, starting to be able to save more, someone just starting out, are there any best practices that you would recommend or have for someone on how to start out budgeting?
So I was talking to Nick, who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and then I was talking to one of my friends earlier this week, and one of the biggest things we've kind of come to realize is a lot of people don't know what their fixed expenses are. I asked my friend this over the weekend, and he laughed, and he said, no, I have no idea what my fixed expenses are.
Would you mind, what is a fixed expense?
So a fixed expense is anything that is recurring monthly and you would consider a necessity.
So like my mortgage.
Yeah. So some other best practices I mentioned, being disciplined and picking a strategy and sticking with it. That's really hard for a lot of people to do. You can say you want to do this, but if you look back a month later, did you actually do it? Kind of make yourself accountable, whether that's on your own or ask a partner.
It's like working out. Like it's easy to, like, it's not hard. It's like going for a run, going for a jog is not hard. It's like that activation energy to get you there is the hard part, right? Like it's just It's just discipline.
Sometimes it takes a lot of momentum to get going, Sean.
Yeah, it's like I have the time to go to the gym, but do I want to get in the car and get myself over there or not? It's really a mental game. Is a lot of being successful and a really strong saver. And going back to these things we see on social media, like, yeah, that's all great, and I would love to do that, but it's really hard to put that in practice if you're not disciplined and honest with yourself.
One of the bullet points you had written down was make it automatic, like a 401k, set it up through payroll and direct deposit. Sometimes you'll hear, like, recent college grads or people starting their first job, there's some reluctance to put money aside because they need the income for day-to-day expenses. There's some fear there about the lower take-home pay. One of the other articles that had come out was also in the Wall Street Journal, and it was the secret to savings for retirement: start before you're 20. And it basically boils down to the power of compounding. You just want to touch on that at all?
I'll first talk a little bit about making it automatic. So I think making it automatic is great. It's like if you have a 401k, you contribute to the 401k, and then the net amount goes into your bank account. And that's what you look at and say, oh, I have this much to spend. If you can do the same thing for other savings, it can be really helpful towards creating those good practices and staying disciplined. And as you mentioned, Adam, it really boils down to the power of compounding. There's a rule called the Rule of 72. And essentially what the Rule of 72 is you divide the number 72 by your average annual return to determine how many years until your money will double. For example, if you assume an average rate of return of 8%, 72 divided by 8 equals 9. So your money would double every 9 years. If you have a $10,000 investment that doubles every 9 years for 40 years, you'll see 10 double to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 80. And that's really what the power of compounding is, and why being able to save at such a young age proves to be so beneficial.
I mean, the longer you give yourself to save, the more powerful that outcome becomes. And again, the Rule of 72, it's not exact, especially as you get towards like bigger returns or longer time frames. But I think, Adam, you had some numbers for examples from that article of if you start saving before you're 20, you can save a little bit up front and have pretty dramatic savings by the time you're in your 60s.
Yeah, so in this article, they had talked about a 14-year-old who was doing summer work, and he was putting the money away in a Roth IRA. And just assuming he worked when he was 13 and 14, earned $10,000 over those 2 summers, put that away, never touched it again. So retirement, so about a 51-year time horizon. Assuming you earned 10%, which would aggressive return there, but made the math easy, and never contributed anything again. By the time he was 65, it would be about $1.29 million. And on the flip side, if someone waited until they were 30 to begin saving, it would grow to about $280,000. Pretty significant for a 16-year difference in timing there.
It's only almost $1 million.
Yeah, just about $1 million.
And that's the same amount of money just waiting 15 or 16 years, which shows you like what that compounding can do. So like you said, it takes the discipline, but especially if you're someone young listening to this, like it can be somewhat helpful to think about, okay, $100 today, if I put that away, may seem pretty insignificant now, but by the time I retire, it could be a pretty nice sum of money.
Oh, yeah.
So, Matt, something we've also seen recently is a lot of hype around, talked about bucketing needs, like figuring out what that needs bucket is. Just bucketing all your expenses has become very popular. So you have emergency bucket, you have a vacation bucket, retirement. What's your view on kind of that outlook? Because it does help contextualize a little bit better if, okay, I'm not just saving this money and it goes away and maybe I never see it again. It's okay, I take this money and I get to spend this on a vacation in 10 years. What are your thoughts on bucketing?
I think for me, I think it's really helpful. It, of course, depends on the person, but being able to compartmentalize what certain money is for can help you, one, save towards that, and then B, on the back end, actually decide this is what I'm going to spend it on. Because if you build up a whole chunk of cash, it can be overwhelming for what you want to do with it, and that can lead to poor decisions or overspending in one area.
When you're working with clients and they have money segregated from the rest of the portfolio, maybe they have a vacation goal and they want to set aside X for vacations. Can you see the benefit of having those funds separate from the rest of the portfolio when there's times of volatility, and they still feel okay incurring those expenses, that they know the money set aside, they know it's for a specific goal?
Oh, certainly. Putting them into different buckets, it's a behavioral thing. If you see your full account value decrease by 15 or 20%, you're not going to feel like you can go on a vacation or make a withdrawal. But if you have that in a separate account and you know that's specifically for vacation, you wouldn't feel as bad taking out the money, even though it is down a little bit. Maybe you don't go on that international vacation and maybe you stick domestically, but behaviorally you still feel confident in using that money for what it's intended for, even in times of market volatility.
I'm glad you touched on the behavioral side of it. There's oftentimes articles that come out that'll say, if you don't buy coffee out, you can dramatically improve your savings standpoint. Like, aside from doing that and letting people enjoy these small indulgences that make life somewhat more enjoyable, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen when it comes to saving?
Well, I was told if I get Starbucks more than twice a week, I won't be able to retire. Is that true?
I don't know. I guess it depends. Are you ordering a grande or a Trenta?
It's funny you bring that up because that's something that I see on social media a lot, is cutting back on these small expenses like going out for coffee every day, or, hey, I have 5 subscriptions, let's back it down to 3 or 4. In reality, these smaller expenses don't add up to much on a monthly basis. And backing those out, the higher likelihood is that money is just going to be spent on something else, discretionary. And a challenge that I see is people reduce or completely eliminate those expenses, but they don't see their savings increase. A better way to look at it is, going back to the first article we touched on, the 50% of fixed expenses. If you don't know what your fixed expenses are, it may be 60%, and maybe you actually are paying a little more than you can afford for your home or your car. And those are items that, if you are able to reduce the cost, are going to propel your ability to save much more.
It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves when I see those types of TikToks or on Twitter. Is like, maybe let's look at the $1,000 card payment is a little bit too much, rather than like the $5 coffee that I get like twice a week.
Right.
Like, it's just, you got to look at the big expenses if you want to make a big impact to some extent. Now, obviously, like, you can't go crazy eating out for every meal and stuff, but yeah.
And sometimes it's easier for some than others. Maybe you can't get a better deal depending on where you're living for a home or for rent, or your car is what you rely on to get yourself to work every day, and you already went an affordable option. So I can recognize in some situations that cutting out these small expenses can help, but if you're really looking to create these good habits and propel your savings, it's important to take a fine-tooth comb to your actual expenses and see where you can make the most out of adding savings.
It just seems like balance is such an important thing here. You don't want to be so stringent that you don't enjoy life, but you also want to plan for the future at the same time. So with that in mind, there's some budgeting apps out there. Without getting into names of some of the apps, can you just talk through the different types that exist?
I would classify them into 3 categories. Like 1, bucketing type of budgeting, 2, an organizing, and then 3, a reporting. The difference there is the bucketing, more like emergency, vacations, retirement, than the percentage of your income. These ones I see require a lot of manual effort. For example, you may say, hey, I have $1,000 this month to spend on food, and then every expense towards food reduces the amount in that bucket, and then you can go for that over all your expenses, whether it's gas, rent, things at home, for example. Another challenge, the challenge there is that it takes a lot of manual effort to keep up with that or make sure all the accounts are linked, but it is more related to like budgeting for emergencies, vacations or fun money, and retirement. Then we have the organization apps, which these can be better to help you get started. These are apps that will look at your bank statement and see what you're spending in different categories each month, or even identifying what monthly subscriptions you have to help you clean up your budget and become more aware. And then finally is the reporting, which is similar to organizing. It essentially just provides you a report of what you're spending each month.
And you had touched on something there with the account linking. And I think it's just important for people to be mindful of what apps they're using and what financial information they're sharing with those third parties.
Most definitely. It's also kind of funny that a lot of these apps have subscriptions themselves. You pay a subscription to help find what else you're paying for subscriptions.
Hey, Matt, do you want to stick around and do some Uncorrelated with us?
Yeah, I heard my middle school German education might come in handy today.
Yes, that's what I hear as well. So for story one here, it is Oktoberfest in Germany, which usually begins with the traditional cry of
O Saft is,
which means it's tapped in German. It marks the beginning of the 18-day festival. City of Munich, their Department of Labor and Economic Development, estimates that Oktoberfest in the city brings in about 1.25 billion euros annually, and the city gets 6.3 million visitors. There was a story from the Associated Press that showed people lined up waiting to get into day one of Oktoberfest.
One of those like epic pictures that if it was made into a mural, they'll like study it 1,000 years from now.
People in lederhosen
Yes.
It is
sprinting down an open street.
It is a picture you can hear and probably smell a little as well.
It's a great picture. But I think the best quote from the whole article was from the Bavarian governor, Markus Söder. He said,
This is a great one.
I can only say one thing. This is the most beautiful, biggest, most important festival in the world. That's a man who loves his beer.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing.
I think you're going to an Oktoberfest this weekend, aren't you,
Yes,
Sean?
a local.
Or you would have gone to an Oktoberfest this past weekend by the time this airs.
Yeah, a local Oktoberfest. I think it'll be a much smaller scale.
I might be going to the same one as you, Sean.
There you go. All right. So it's reaching the U.S. Was this a bucket list? Like, would you ever go to Munich for?
So I would. I don't think I would go out of my way to.
If you just happened to be in Munich that week.
I studied abroad in the Czech Republic, and they do a sister festival called Springfest in the springtime, and a few of my friends went, and they said it was a good time.
Judging by this picture, Sean, I think I'm 15 years too late for
It does look
Oktoberfest.
Like it's just 1,000 frat bros just rolling in. ready to rip.
It does look like that. The 1 liter mug this year will cost between $13.45 to $15.90, up 6% from last year, and probably still cheaper than a beer at Citizens Bank Park.
It is, because at first I was like, that's a little steep, but I guess in liters, when we convert that to American, that's
32 ounces, I think.
So it's a value beer. It's a bigger beer.
Oh, they come in the big
Those big
glass
glasses.
jugs or mugs.
Well, have fun at your Oktoberfests. The second story comes from NPR. And again, we're knocking out of the park here with the visuals that people can't see.
Yes.
But there was a cascade of red wine that flooded city streets in Portugal after tanks ruptured, and it looks like a flash flood.
Yes. 581,000 gallons.
It was surplus red wine that was through the government's crisis distillation program that they aimed to remove a glut of wine from the market pipeline before this year's harvest. And I guess they achieved their goal. Probably not the way they wanted to.
I wonder if this is an inside job. It's a quick way to to get rid of their excess wine.
The company did say in a statement that they were going to bear the costs of the cleanup. I think there was some concern that some of the farms nearby could have been damaged from the alcohol, but there was a video that showed it, and it was moving.
It's pretty miraculous. It says no one got hurt and only one cellar was flooded, which is
I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah.
I was wondering if flood insurance would cover wine.
It's a great question.
I don't know.
That might be a question for me.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. Pure speculation here. But in last month's CPI report, wine away from home rose 6%, 5.9% year over year. But wine at home, for those looking to budget and save, only increased 1% year over year.
So there you go. It's a great way to save. Start drinking your wine at home.
I would agree. That is something that would make it's an impactful way to save. You can cut that.
Are you a red wine or a white wine guy?
I'm a red wine person. I've tried white wine. Doesn't do it for me. I will say that I do like my red wine a little bit chilled.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
White wine's nice in the summer. It's more refreshing.
I'm thinking with Matt. I'm just, it just doesn't.
I'll drink a white sangria.
White sangria?
Right. That's nice.
But the wine that flooded this town in Portugal, it was red wine. So
Yes.
there was probably also some staining that came along with it.
Yes. So there we go. Story for the beer lovers. Story for the wine lovers. But I think
This was an alcohol themed uncorrelated.
Yes.
We love to stick with the themes and those uncorrelateds.
Yes, very much alcohol themed. But I'd like to thank Matt. If you have any questions for Matt about savings or other planning topics that you're wondering about, feel free to email us again at wealthiq@marshallfinancial.com or reach out to us on Twitter at offstreetpod, and we will redirect those to Matt. So Matt, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. By the time you hear the next episode next week, we hope to have some guests on from the conference that we're at right now in Phoenix.
Yes, some more very special guests lined up. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Until next week.
Until next week.